I'm a detective in Asheville, North Carolina, and I've been doing this job for about 12 years now. I've seen car accidents, domestic disputes, the occasional robbery, all the usual stuff you'd expect in a mid-sized mountain town. Nothing too crazy. We're not exactly a crime hotspot. Most nights, the biggest problem we deal with is some drunk college kid from the university causing trouble downtown. That's why what happened on October 15th felt so impossible, so completely wrong. It shattered everything I thought I understood about the world. But I need to back up a bit. I need to tell you about Rebecca Williams and her daughter Sophia, because that's where it all started. That's when I first heard about the man with no face. It was 3 weeks before everything went to hell. I remember it was a Tuesday night, late, probably close to midnight. I was at the station finishing up some paperwork, because I'm terrible at staying on top of that stuff during the day. The office was quiet except for the hum of the ancient air conditioner and Officer Jenkins eating chips at his desk. Then the phone rang, and Jenkins picked it up. I watched his face go pale. He held the receiver away from his ear, and even from across the room, I could hear the screaming. A woman was hysterical. I couldn't make out words, just raw, primal sounds of grief that made my stomach twist. Jenkins looked at me with wide eyes and mouthed, "We need to go. Now." We took separate cars and raced over to Maple Ridge Drive, which is this nice little neighborhood on the east side of town, the kind of place where people actually know their neighbors, where kids draw on the sidewalks with chalk and everyone waves when you drive by. When we pulled up to the address, there were already 2 ambulances there, lights flashing red and blue across the brick houses. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered on their lawns, hugging themselves against the autumn chill, whispering and pointing. The woman from the phone call was sitting on her front porch steps, wrapped in a blanket that one of the paramedics must have given her. She was rocking back and forth, staring straight ahead at nothing. Her hands were shaking so badly that the coffee cup someone had pressed into her grip was sloshing liquid onto her pajama pants. I recognized that look immediately. I'd seen it before on the faces of parents who'd lost their kids. That vacant, shattered expression of someone whose entire world had just collapsed. I walked up slowly, keeping my voice low and gentle. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Andrew Foster. I know this is an incredibly difficult time, but I need to talk to you about what happened tonight." She didn't respond, just kept rocking, kept staring. For a long moment I thought she might be in complete shock, too far gone to communicate. But then she turned her head toward me, and when our eyes met, I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just grief in those eyes. It was pure, absolute terror. "He called her," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The man with no face. He called my baby girl." I pulled out my notepad, more out of habit than anything else. "Who called your daughter?" "I don't know who he is, but he was there, on the phone, at midnight, exactly at midnight." Her voice cracked on the last word, and tears started streaming down her face again. I sat down on the step beside her, giving her a moment to collect herself. "Can you tell me what happened? Start from the beginning. Take your time." She took a shaky breath and began to tell me her story. Her name was Rebecca Williams, and she worked as a nurse at Mission Hospital in the emergency room. Long shifts, brutal hours, but she loved her job. Her daughter Sophia was 9 years old, smart kid, responsible, mature for her age. Rebecca was a single mom, had been since Sophia's father walked out when she was 2, so Sophia had learned early how to take care of herself. She knew the routine. Come home from school, do homework, make something simple for dinner, watch a little TV, and be in bed by 10 o'clock. No exceptions. That night, Rebecca had been scheduled for a 12-hour shift. but it had been unusually slow for a Tuesday. By 11, the ER was empty, so her supervisor sent her home early. She was exhausted but grateful for the extra time. She drove home through the quiet streets, looking forward to checking on Sophia and finally getting some sleep herself. When she unlocked the front door and stepped inside, the house was dark except for the soft glow coming from the living room. That immediately set off alarm bells in her head. Sophia should have been in bed hours ago. Rebecca walked into the living room and found her daughter sitting on the couch in her pajamas, staring down at her cell phone with an expression that made Rebecca's heart skip a beat. Sophia's face was completely white, drained of all color, and her eyes were wide and unblinking, fixed on the phone's screen like she was hypnotized. "Sophia? Baby? What are you doing up?" Rebecca asked, trying to keep the worry out of her voice. Sophia didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge that her mother had spoken, just kept staring at that phone like it was the only thing in the world. Rebecca walked over quickly and put her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Sophia, honey, look at me. Talk to me. What's wrong?" Finally, Sophia looked up. The expression on her face was something Rebecca said she would never forget as long as she lived. It was raw fear, the kind of fear that makes your blood run cold, the kind of fear that children shouldn't even be capable of feeling. "Mom," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. "There's a man on the phone. He knows my name. He says he's coming to get me." Rebecca's nurse training kicked in immediately. She grabbed the phone from Sophia's hands, needing to see who had called, needing to know who would dare threaten her child. But when she looked at the screen, there was nothing there, just the normal home screen with Sophia's background picture of the two of them at the beach last summer. No call in progress, no missed call notifications, nothing. "What man? Who called you?" Rebecca demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. She pulled up the recent calls list, scrolling through quickly. The last incoming call had been from Rebecca herself at 9 p.m., just her routine check-in to make sure Sophia had eaten dinner. "He was there, Mom. I swear. I promise I'm not lying." Sophia's eyes were filling with tears now, her voice getting higher and more panicked. "Okay, but baby, it's not even midnight yet. Look." Rebecca showed her the phone screen. The time read 11:35 p.m. Sophia's face crumpled in confusion. No, that's wrong. Mom, it was midnight. I saw it. When the phone rang, when I answered it, the clock said 12 a.m. I saw it." Rebecca looked at her watch. 11:36 p.m. She glanced up at the wall clock mounted above the TV. 11:36 p.m. She looked back at Sophia's phone, checking again. Still 11:36 p.m. "Sweetheart, I think maybe you fell asleep on the couch and had a nightmare. That's all. You know you're supposed to be in bed by 10. You were tired and you had a bad dream." "I wasn't sleeping," Sophia shouted, and Rebecca actually jumped. Sophia never yelled. Never. She was the quietest, most well-behaved kid Rebecca had ever known. "Mom, please, you have to believe me. There was a man. He knew my name. He said it 3 times. He said Sophia, 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 and then he said he was coming. And I couldn't hang up. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything." Rebecca pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight. She could feel Sophia's heart hammering against her chest like a trapped bird. Okay, I believe you. It's okay now. I'm here. Nobody is going to hurt you, I promise." She held Sophia for a long time, rocking her slowly, stroking her hair the way she used to when Sophia was little, and woke up from nightmares about monsters under the bed. Gradually, she felt Sophia's breathing slow down, felt her body relax slightly in her arms. The panic was fading, replaced by exhaustion. "Let's get you to bed, all right? I'm going to be right down the hall in my room. If you get scared, if you need anything at all, you just call for me and I'll come running, okay?" Sophia nodded against her shoulder, and Rebecca helped her up from the couch. They walked together down the hallway to Sophia's bedroom, where Rebecca pulled back the covers and tucked her daughter in carefully. She kissed her forehead, brushed the hair back from her face, and left the bedroom door halfway open so the hallway light would spill in. Sophia had always been afraid of complete darkness. Rebecca went to her own room and changed into her pajamas, trying to shake off the unsettled feeling in her stomach. Kids had nightmares. It was normal. There was nothing to worry about. But as she stood at the bathroom sink brushing her teeth, she heard something that made her freeze. A phone was ringing, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't her phone. It was Sophia's. Rebecca rinsed her mouth quickly and stepped out into the hallway, listening. The ringing was coming from the living room. She walked back down the hall, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor, and saw Sophia's phone on the couch where she'd left it. The screen was lit up, showing an incoming call, but where the caller's number should have been displayed, there was only static. Not a blank space, not unknown number, but actual static. Flickering, distorted, gray and white static that seemed to pulse and shift with each ring. Rebecca picked up the phone with shaking hands. The time on the screen read 12 a.m. She whipped her head around to look at the wall clock. 11:43 p.m. Her heart started pounding. This wasn't right. This wasn't possible. She looked back at the phone, still showing 12 a.m., still ringing, still showing that impossible static where a number should be. Every rational part of her brain was screaming at her not to answer it, but she had to know. She had to understand what was happening. So she swiped to accept the call and brought the phone to her ear. Hello? The sound that came through the speaker was like nothing she'd ever heard before. Static, yes, but underneath it was something else. Breathing. Slow and deliberate, and somehow wrong, like it wasn't coming from human lungs. It made her skin crawl. Who is this? Rebecca demanded, trying to sound strong, trying to sound like she wasn't terrified. The breathing stopped. There was absolute silence for 3 seconds, 4, 5. Then a voice came through the static, distorted and layered, like multiple voices speaking at once through a broken radio. She answered for me, the voice said. Now the door is open. Now I can come. The call disconnected. Rebecca stood in her living room, staring at the phone in her hand. The time now showed 11:44 p.m. When she opened the call log with trembling fingers, there was nothing there. No record of any incoming call. Nothing. Then Sophia started screaming. Rebecca dropped the phone and ran. She flew down the hallway and burst through Sophia's bedroom door. Her daughter was sitting bolt upright in bed, her eyes huge with terror, pointing at something on her nightstand. Rebecca looked and her blood turned to ice. Sophia's phone was there, the same phone that Rebecca had just been holding in the living room. Somehow it had moved. Somehow it was here. "Mom, he's here!" Sophia shrieked. "He's inside the phone!" Rebecca stared at the phone. The screen was glowing, but it wasn't showing the normal display. Instead, there was a face, or something that should have been a face. The features were blurred and smudged, like someone had taken a photograph and dragged their fingers through it while the ink was still wet. But the eyes were crystal clear, completely black. Empty voids that seemed to bore straight into Rebecca's soul. And then the thing smiled. The phone screen went dark. Sophia gasped and clutched at her chest. "Mom, I can't breathe. I can't." Rebecca lunged toward her daughter, but before she could reach the bed, Sophia's body went rigid. Her back arched off the mattress in a way that backs shouldn't be able to arch. And then Rebecca heard it, the sound of something breaking. A wet snap that echoed in the small bedroom. Sophia's left arm bent backward at the elbow, then her right arm, then her legs folding at impossible angles. Her ribs cracked one by one, a horrible sequence of pops and snaps like firecrackers going off. "No! Sophia! Baby! No! Please!" Rebecca screamed, trying to reach her, trying to stop it, but there was nothing she could do. Sophia's jaw dislocated with a sound like breaking wood. Her spine twisted, vertebrae shattering in sequence from bottom to top. Sophia's eyes stayed open the entire time, locked on her mother's face, filled with pain and terror and a silent plea for help that Rebecca couldn't answer. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds of watching her daughter's body break apart piece by piece. Then Sophia went completely still. Her eyes were still open, still staring, but there was nothing behind them anymore. Her body lay at angles that weren't possible, twisted and shattered like a doll that had been thrown against a wall. Rebecca collapsed beside the bed, pulling Sophia's broken body into her arms, and she screamed. She screamed until her throat was raw, until she couldn't make sound anymore, until the neighbors heard and called the police, until I showed up at her door. Now she sat on that porch step, looking at me with eyes that had seen something no parent should ever see. And she said, "Detective, you have to warn people. Please, don't let anyone answer their phone at midnight. Don't let this happen to anyone else's child." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that grief was making her imagine things that weren't real. But before I could say anything, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. My hand started shaking. Then every phone in the neighborhood went off at once. The emergency alert system, that harsh, jarring tone that makes your stomach drop even when you know it's just a test. But this wasn't a test. Rebecca's phone, still clutched in her hand. My phone. Officer Jenkins's phone. The phones of every neighbor standing in their yards. Every phone on Maple Ridge Drive, maybe every phone in Asheville, all screaming the same message. Emergency alert. Do not answer incoming calls after midnight. If your phone rings at midnight, do not answer. Leave your home immediately. This is not a drill. The message repeated 3 times, then stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. I looked at Rebecca. She looked at me. "It's starting," she whispered. "God help us. It's only just beginning." The next few hours were complete chaos. My phone started ringing off the hook with calls from panicked residents. Jenkins and I stood there on Rebecca's lawn, watching as lights turned on in every house on the street. People came stumbling out onto their porches in pajamas and bathrobes, clutching their phones, looking around at each other with confused, frightened faces. Some of them were crying, others were angry, demanding to know if this was some kind of sick joke. But it wasn't a joke. Within 20 minutes of that emergency alert, we got the first call. Another death. A man named David Park, 32 years old, found dead in his apartment on the west side of town. Then another call came in. Patricia Hernandez, age 47, discovered by her husband in their bedroom. Then another, and another. By 2 a.m, we had 7 confirmed deaths across Asheville, all with the same impossible circumstances. All of them had answered their phones at midnight. All of them had died with every bone in their body shattered. I left Rebecca with a victim support counselor and headed to the station, where absolute pandemonium had broken out. Every officer in the department had been called in, even the ones who were supposed to be off duty. Captain Morrison was standing in the middle of the bullpen, barking orders, trying to coordinate response teams, but his face was pale and his hands were shaking. He'd been a cop for 30 years and I'd never seen him look scared before. "Foster, I need you to head over to the Park residence," he said when he saw me. "Get whatever information you can. We need to figure out what the hell is happening." David Park's apartment was in a newer complex near the university, the kind of place that catered to young professionals who wanted to be close to downtown. When I arrived, there were already 2 patrol cars outside, and a crowd of residents gathered in the parking lot, some of them filming with their phones. I pushed through and made my way upstairs to apartment 304. The door was open. Inside, David's roommate, a guy named Jason, was sitting on their couch with his head in his hands. He looked up when I walked in, and I could see he'd been crying. I tried to stop him, Jason said immediately, his voice breaking. I told him not to answer. I heard the alert. I knew something was wrong, but he didn't listen. Tell me what happened, I said, sitting down across from him. Jason explained that he and David had been watching a movie in the living room. It was late, almost midnight, and they were both half asleep on the couch. When the emergency alert came through, it jolted them both awake. Jason said he felt this immediate, overwhelming sense of dread, like something was terribly wrong. He wanted to turn off his phone, wanted to go hide in his room, but David just laughed it off. He said it was probably a false alarm, like those amber alerts that wake you up in the middle of the night. He said we'd probably find out in the morning that it was a system malfunction or something. Jason's voice was hollow now, distant. Then his phone rang, right at midnight. I watched the clock on the cable box flip from 11:59 to 12, and the second it changed, David's phone started ringing. What did the call look like? I asked. That's the thing that freaked me out. The screen was all messed up, like static, Just gray and white noise where the number should be. I told David not to answer it. I literally grabbed his arm and said, "Dude, didn't you just hear the alert? Don't answer that." But he pulled away from me. He said I was being paranoid. Jason's hands were trembling as he continued. He answered the call and put it to his ear. At first he didn't say anything, just listened. Then his face changed. All the color drained out of it and he looked terrified, more scared than I've ever seen anyone look. He tried to hang up, but he couldn't. His thumb was pressing the end call button over and over, but nothing was happening. The call just stayed connected. Did you hear what the caller said? I asked. No, but I saw David's reaction. He started backing away from me, toward his bedroom, still holding the phone to his ear. He was shaking his head, saying no, 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 over and over. Then he went into his room and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. Jason wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. I ran to the door and started pounding on it, yelling at him to open up, to hang up the phone, to just throw it away. For maybe 10 seconds there was nothing. Just silence. Then I heard this sound, this awful cracking sound, and David started screaming. He screamed for maybe 5 seconds and then just stopped, completely silent. What did you do? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I broke the door down. Took me 3 tries, but I got it open. And David was on his bed, just lying there. His body was all twisted up, bent in ways that aren't possible. His arms were broken. His legs, I could see his ribs pushing against his shirt at wrong angles. His neck was turned almost completely around, and his eyes were open, staring right at me. Jason put his face in his hands. I called 911 immediately, but I knew he was already gone. I thanked Jason for his time and went to examine David's bedroom. The forensics team was already there, taking photographs, collecting evidence. David's body had been removed, but I could see the outline on the bed where he'd been lying, could see the blood on the sheets, where broken bones had pierced through skin. His phone was still there on the nightstand, screen dark and innocent looking. I pulled on a pair of gloves and picked it up, pressing the power button. The phone came to life, showing David's lock screen photo of him and some friends at a concert. I checked the call log. Nothing. No record of any incoming call at midnight, just like with Sophia's phone. My own phone buzzed and I pulled it out to see a text from Captain Morrison. 2 more deaths reported. Come back to the station immediately. When I got back, the station was even more crowded than before. Family members of victims were there demanding answers. News crews were setting up outside, their cameras pointed at our building. Morrison pulled me into his office and shut the door, muffling the noise from outside. 9 deaths so far, he said, collapsing into his chair. 9 people in one night, Andrew, all the same way, all after answering phones at midnight. Has anyone checked with the phone companies? I asked. Maybe they can trace where the calls are coming from. Already tried. Called every major carrier. They all say the same thing. There's no record of any unusual call activity at midnight. No calls made to those numbers. Nothing in their systems at all. That's impossible. I know it's impossible. Morrison slammed his hand on the desk. But it's happening anyway. And the worst part is, we have no idea how to stop it. He pulled out a bottle of whiskey from his desk drawer and poured himself a shot, then offered me the bottle. I shook my head. I needed to stay sharp. The mayor is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning, Morrison continued after downing his drink. She wants answers. The media wants answers. These families want answers. And we have nothing to give them except a warning that sounds completely insane. What if it spreads? I said quietly. Morrison looked at me. What do you mean? What if it's not just Asheville? What if, whatever this is, it starts happening in other cities, other states? Don't, Morrison said, pointing at me. Don't even put that thought into the universe. But it was too late. The thought was already there, and I couldn't shake it. 9 people dead in one night in a city of 90,000. What would happen in Charlotte? In New York? In Los Angeles? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jenkins. You need to see this. Come to the tech lab. I left Morrison's office and headed downstairs to where our small IT department was located. Jenkins was there with our tech specialist, a young woman named Amy Foster, no relation to me despite the shared last name. She was staring at her computer screen with a look of pure disbelief. Show him, Jenkins said. Amy turned her monitor toward me. On the screen was a video, grainy and dark, from what looked like security camera footage. This is from David Park's apartment building, she explained. Hallway camera, 3rd floor. She pressed play. The timestamp showed 11:58 p.m. The hallway was empty and quiet. At exactly midnight, something changed. The lights in the hallway flickered. Just once, barely noticeable. Then, for just a fraction of a second, there was something in the hallway. A figure, tall and thin and wrong, its proportions not quite human. The image was distorted, blurry, like looking at something through layers of static. Then it was gone. That's right outside David's apartment, Amy said quietly, right before he died. Play it again, I said. She did. I watched that split-second figure appear and disappear, and this time I noticed something else. The figure seemed to be looking at something, at a specific apartment door. David's door. We've been checking security footage from all the locations where people died tonight, Amy continued. Every single one has the same thing. Right at midnight, lights flicker, and for just a moment, this thing appears. Then someone dies. What is it? Jenkins asked. I don't know, I said. But that was a lie. I had an idea. A terrible, impossible idea that I didn't want to believe. Whatever had killed Sophia Williams, whatever had killed David Park and 7 others tonight, it wasn't human. It came through the phone somehow. And once you answered, once you made that connection, it could find you. It could reach you. And according to Rebecca Williams, it had started with her daughter answering at midnight. My phone buzzed for what felt like the 100th time that night. But this time, when I looked at the screen, my blood went cold. It was a text from an unknown number. All it said was, "Tomorrow night, more will answer." I stared at that text message for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest. Jenkins and Amy crowded around me to look at the screen. "Did you try calling it back?" Amy asked. I hadn't. My finger hovered over the number, but something stopped me. Some deep instinct told me that making contact with whatever sent that message would be a very bad idea. Instead, I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Morrison. We need to figure out how to stop this, I said, before tomorrow night. The three of us spent the next several hours going through everything we had: security footage, witness statements, phone records, autopsy reports that were starting to come in. We were looking for any pattern, any clue that might tell us how to protect people. But the more we dug, the less sense it made. All 9 victims had been alone when they answered their phones. Some were in locked rooms, some were in open spaces, but they were all isolated from other people at the moment of death. The few witnesses who'd been nearby, like Jason with David, reported hearing the screams but being unable to help. Locked doors, distance, or in one case a woman who'd answered while in her car, doors locked, windows up. Her husband had been standing right outside the vehicle, watching helplessly as she died. What struck me most was the timing. Every single death occurred within seconds of answering the call. Whatever this thing was, it worked fast. By 6 in the morning, I was exhausted. My eyes burned from staring at computer screens, and I'd consumed so much coffee that my hands were shaking. Morrison came down to check on us, looking just as worn out as I felt. "Go home," he said. "Get a few hours of sleep. The mayor's meeting is at noon, and I need you there with a clear head." "Captain, I don't think we should—" "That's an order, Foster. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." I wanted to argue, but he was right. I grabbed my jacket and headed out to the parking lot. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It should have been beautiful, but all I could think about was that text message. Tomorrow night, more will answer. I drove home through empty streets, my mind racing. My apartment was on the north side of town, a small 1-bedroom place that I'd been renting for the past 5 years. It wasn't much, but it was mine. When I pulled into my parking spot, I sat in the car for a moment, too tired to move. Then I noticed something. My upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Walsh, was sitting on her balcony wrapped in a blanket. She was an elderly woman, maybe 70, who usually spent her mornings doing Tai Chi in the courtyard. But now she was just sitting there, staring out at nothing. I got out of my car and called up to her. "Mrs. Walsh, are you all right?" She looked down at me, and I could see she'd been crying. "Detective Foster, did you hear about what happened last night?" "I did. I'm actually working on it." "My sister," she said, her voice cracking. "She lives in Charlotte. She called me this morning. It happened there too. 3 people dead. The same way." My stomach dropped. Charlotte? And Raleigh. And Durham. It's spreading, Detective. Whatever this is, it's not just Asheville anymore. I thanked her and went inside, my exhaustion replaced by a new wave of dread. I pulled out my phone and started searching news sites. Mrs. Walsh was right. Reports were coming in from all over North Carolina. Mysterious deaths, all happening at midnight, all after people answered their phones. The death toll was now at 23 across the state. I collapsed onto my couch and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I started to drift off, I'd see Sophia's broken body, hear Rebecca's screams, see that distorted figure in the security footage. Finally, around 9, I gave up and got in the shower, hoping the hot water would clear my head. It didn't help. By the time I got to City Hall for the mayor's meeting, I felt like I was moving through a fog. The conference room was packed with people. Mayor Linda Hayes sat at the head of the table, flanked by her advisors. Police Chief Rodriguez was there, along with Morrison and several other detectives. Representatives from the phone companies had been called in, looking nervous and confused. There was even someone from the FBI on a video call. "Let's get started," Mayor Hayes said, her voice tight with stress. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with and what we're doing to stop it." Morrison stood up and gave a summary of everything we knew, which wasn't much. 9 deaths in Asheville, 14 more across the state, all following the same pattern. Calls at midnight from untraceable numbers, victims dying within seconds of answering. No physical evidence, no signs of forced entry, no way to explain how the victims' bones were being shattered. One of the phone company reps, a man in his 40s wearing an expensive suit, cleared his throat. I want to assure everyone that we're doing everything we can to investigate this on our end. But the truth is, we have no record of these calls in our systems. It's as if they never happened. That's impossible, Chief Rodriguez said. Every call leaves a trace, every single one. I know, but these don't. We've checked and rechecked. There's nothing there. The FBI agent on the screen spoke up. We're treating this as a potential terrorist attack. It's possible someone has developed technology that can hack into phones remotely and cause some kind of frequency that could theoretically affect the human body. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. With all due respect, that doesn't explain the security footage. We have video of something appearing in these locations right when people die, something that isn't human. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. What are you suggesting, Detective Foster? Mayor Hayes asked. I hesitated. What I was about to say would make me sound insane, but I'd seen the evidence with my own eyes. I don't think we're dealing with technology. I think we're dealing with something else, something we don't understand. Are you seriously suggesting something supernatural? The FBI agent said, and I could hear the skepticism in his voice, even through the computer speakers. I'm suggesting we stop trying to explain this with conventional logic and start focusing on how to protect people. Whatever this thing is, it uses phones as a conduit. It calls at midnight. If people don't answer, they don't die. It's that simple. Morrison nodded. Detective Foster is right. We need to get the message out. Tell everyone in the city, hell, everyone in the state, not to answer their phones at midnight. We already sent out the emergency alert, one of the mayor's advisors said, but people aren't taking it seriously. They think it's a hoax, some kind of viral marketing campaign. Then we need to make them take it seriously, I said. Show them the footage. Tell them about the deaths. Scare them if we have to. Because if we don't, more people are going to die tonight. The mayor was quiet for a moment, then nodded. All right. We'll hold a press conference this afternoon. Show the public what we know. In the meantime, I want every available officer on duty tonight. Set up checkpoints, do welfare checks, whatever it takes to keep people safe. The meeting continued for another hour, everyone throwing out ideas, most of them useless. When it finally ended, I walked out of City Hall feeling more helpless than when I'd walked in. The truth was, we had no idea how to stop this. All we could do was warn people and hope they listened. I spent the rest of the day at the station, coordinating with other detectives, making sure we had a plan for tonight. We divided the city into zones, assigned officers to patrol each area, set up a hotline for people to call if they felt threatened. It was something, at least. Better than doing nothing. Around 7 p.m. my phone rang. It was Rebecca Williams. Detective Foster, I need to talk to you. There's something I didn't tell you before. About the night Sophia died. What is it? Can you come to my sister's house? I'm staying with her now. I can't go back to my place. She gave me the address, and I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, Rebecca's sister answered the door. She was younger than Rebecca, maybe mid-30s, with the same dark hair and eyes. She led me to the living room where Rebecca was sitting on the couch, looking even more exhausted than she had the night before. Thank you for coming, Rebecca said. I know you're busy. What did you need to tell me? She took a deep breath. The night Sophia died, after I answered that call, after I heard that voice, there was something else. Right before the thing said it could come, it said something I didn't mention before. It said a name. What name? Jessica Mitchell. It said, Jessica Mitchell opened the door first. The name didn't mean anything to me. Who's Jessica Mitchell? I don't know. I've never heard that name before in my life. But I think she might be important. I think maybe she was the first one. The first person to answer. I pulled out my phone and opened the database, searching for Jessica Mitchell in Asheville. Nothing came up. I expanded the search to all of North Carolina. Still nothing recent. Then I tried searching obituaries, death records, going back further. And I found her. Jessica Mitchell. Died 6 months ago in Wilmington, North Carolina. Cause of death listed as unknown. She'd been found in her apartment, every bone in her body broken. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What? What is it?" "This has been happening for 6 months. Jessica Mitchell was the first victim, and now it's spreading." Rebecca's face went pale. "So it's getting stronger. Or hungrier," I said. "We need to find out everything we can about Jessica Mitchell. If she was the first, maybe she's the key to stopping this." I stood up to leave, but Rebecca grabbed my arm. "Detective, please, promise me you'll stop this thing. Promise me Sophia's death won't be for nothing." I looked into her eyes, saw the desperate hope there, and I wanted to promise her. I wanted to tell her we'd figure it out, we'd stop it, we'd make sure no one else died. But I couldn't, because I didn't know if that was true. "I'll do everything I can," I said instead. As I drove back to the station, my phone showed 9:47 p.m., less than 3 hours until midnight, less than 3 hours until it would start again. I called Morrison and told him about Jessica Mitchell. He agreed we needed to investigate, but there wasn't time before midnight. We'd have to wait until tomorrow, assuming we all survived the night. I got back to the station just after 10. The bullpen was full of officers gearing up, checking equipment, preparing to head out into the city. Everyone looked tense, afraid. We were cops, trained to handle dangerous situations, but this was something different. This was something we couldn't fight with guns or handcuffs. At 10:30, I headed out in my patrol car with Jenkins. We were assigned to the east side, the area around Maple Ridge Drive. As we drove through the neighborhoods, I could see lights on in almost every house. People were awake, scared, waiting for midnight to come. My phone buzzed. Another text from that unknown number. 3 hours ago you had time. Now you have minutes. Are you ready, Detective Foster? I showed the text to Jenkins. His face went white. How does it know your name? I don't know, I said, but my hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. This thing, whatever it was, knew who I was. It was watching me specifically. The thought made my skin crawl. We continued our patrol, driving slowly through the quiet streets. At 11:15, we got our first call. A woman on Berkeley Avenue reported hearing her phone ring, even though it was powered off. She was hysterical, begging us to come help her. We arrived to find her standing in her front yard, her phone smashed to pieces on the driveway. I threw it out the window, she explained, tears streaming down her face. I turned it off. I took the battery out, but it kept ringing. I could hear it from inside the phone. So I threw it out, and then I stomped on it until it stopped. Jenkins radioed it in while I tried to calm the woman down. Her name was Jennifer Reeves, and she lived alone with her 2 cats. She was convinced the thing was coming for her. You did the right thing, I told her. The phone can't hurt you if it's destroyed. Do you have somewhere else you can stay tonight? Family? Friends? She nodded, still shaking. My boyfriend lives across town. I'll go there. Good. Go now. Don't wait. We watched her get in her car and drive away, then continued our patrol. More calls came in over the radio. Similar reports from all over the city. Phones ringing when they shouldn't be. Unknown numbers, people panicking and destroying their devices. At 11:37, Morrison's voice came through. All units, be advised. We're getting reports of widespread phone activity. The calls are starting early tonight. I repeat, the calls are starting before midnight. My stomach turned. It was adapting, learning, getting stronger, just like Rebecca had said. At 11:42, my own phone started to ring. I looked down at the screen and my blood went cold. The caller ID showed nothing but static, that same flickering gray and white pattern that every victim had described. The time on my phone read 12 a.m., even though the clock on the car dashboard showed 11:42 p.m. "Don't answer it," Jenkins said immediately, reaching over like he was going to grab the phone from my hand. "I'm not going to," I said, but I couldn't look away from the screen. The phone kept ringing, vibrating in my palm, and with each ring I felt this strange pull, this overwhelming urge to answer it, to put it to my ear, to hear what the voice would say. It was like being hypnotized, like my hand was moving on its own, my thumb sliding toward the accept button. "Andrew!" Jenkins shouted, and the sound of my first name snapped me out of it. I fumbled with the phone, nearly dropped it, then threw it out the window. It hit the pavement and the screen shattered, but even broken I could still hear it ringing, that distorted, wrong sound that seemed to come from somewhere far away. Jenkins put the car in reverse and we backed away from the phone quickly. Through the rearview mirror, I watched it lying there on the dark street, still ringing, still glowing with that static-filled screen. Then the light flickered once, twice, and went dark. The ringing stopped. "Jesus Christ," Jenkins breathed. That was close. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I'd almost answered. I'd almost given in to that pull. If Jenkins hadn't shouted my name, if I'd been alone, I would be dead right now. The radio crackled. "All units, we have multiple calls coming in. Repeat, multiple casualties across all zones. Officers need immediate backup at..." The transmission cut off into static, then came back. "7 confirmed deaths so far and counting. Stay alert. Do not, I repeat, do not answer your phones regardless of the number showing." Jenkins and I looked at each other. 7 deaths, and it wasn't even midnight yet. Whatever was happening, it was escalating faster than any of us had anticipated. We spent the next 15 minutes responding to calls, checking on residents, finding people who were too scared to move from their homes. At one house on Maple Ridge Drive, just 3 doors down from where Sophia Williams had lived, we found an elderly man having a heart attack. His phone was on the floor next to him, screen showing that same static. He was still alive, barely, clutching his chest and gasping for air. We called for an ambulance and stayed with him until it arrived. The paramedics said he'd probably survive, that the heart attack had come from fear and stress, not from answering the call. At 11:58, 2 minutes before actual midnight, every phone in the city that was still working started ringing at once. Every single one. You could hear it echoing through the neighborhoods, thousands of phones all crying out in unison. It was the most terrifying sound I'd ever heard, like the city itself was screaming. People ran out of their houses, throwing their phones away, smashing them against the ground, tossing them into trash cans. I saw one man drop his phone into a bucket of water. Another woman was trying to flush hers down the toilet. The panic was spreading faster than we could control it. Then, at exactly midnight, everything went silent. The phones stopped ringing. The streetlights flickered and went out, plunging the entire neighborhood into darkness. Jenkins and I sat in the patrol car, our headlights the only illumination on the street, and waited. Nothing happened. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20. "Maybe it's over," Jenkins whispered. Then the screaming started. It came from everywhere at once, houses up and down the street, people crying out in terror and agony. Jenkins and I jumped out of the car and ran toward the nearest screams. They were coming from a house halfway down the block, a small ranch-style home with a neat front lawn. The front door was standing open. We ran inside, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Police! Where are you?" A woman's voice called from upstairs. "Help! Please help us." We took the stairs 2 at a time and followed the voice to a bedroom at the end of the hall. Inside, we found a woman, maybe 40 years old, kneeling beside a man on the bed. He was convulsing, his body jerking violently, and I could hear that awful sound of bones breaking. "He answered his phone," the woman sobbed. "I tried to stop him, but he answered, and now this is happening. Please, please do something." But there was nothing we could do. Jenkins and I could only stand there and watch as the man's body destroyed itself from the inside out. His arms bent backward, his legs twisted at the knees, his spine curved into an impossible arch. The whole time, his eyes were open, conscious, feeling everything. It took 45 seconds of pure agony before he finally went still. The woman collapsed against the bed, her screams turning into broken sobs. Jenkins called for backup and a coroner while I tried to comfort her, but what could I say? What words could possibly make this better? We left her with the paramedics who arrived a few minutes later and went back out into the chaos. The radio was non-stop now, calls flooding in from every zone. 14 deaths, 20, 32. The numbers kept climbing. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't satisfied with 9 victims anymore. It wanted more, much more. At 12:47 a.m., I got a call from Morrison. His voice sounded hollow, defeated. "Foster, get back to the station. We need to regroup." When Jenkins and I arrived, the station was in disarray. Officers were coming back from their patrols looking shell-shocked. Some were crying. Others just sat at their desks, staring at nothing. Morrison was in his office with the door closed, and when I knocked, he didn't answer. I opened it anyway and found him sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand. 63, he said without looking at me. 63 people dead in Asheville alone. Across the state, we're at 217. I sat down across from him. "We need to find Jessica Mitchell. She's the connection. She has to be." I already sent 2 detectives to Wilmington. They're at her old apartment now, trying to find anything that might help us. But Andrew, even if we figure out what started this, how do we stop it? How do we fight something we can't see or touch? "I don't know," I admitted, "but we have to try." Morrison finished his whiskey and poured another. "You should go home. Get some rest. We'll continue this in the morning." I didn't want to leave, but he was right. I was exhausted, and I wouldn't be any good to anyone if I collapsed. I drove home through streets that looked like a war zone. Broken phones littered the sidewalks. Some houses were dark, their occupants either fled or dead. Others were lit up like Christmas. Every light on. People too scared to sleep. When I got to my apartment building, I noticed Mrs. Walsh's lights were on upstairs. I thought about checking on her, making sure she was okay, but I was too tired. I'd check in the morning. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, not bothering to turn on the lights. I just wanted to fall into bed and forget about this nightmare for a few hours. But as I closed the door behind me, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A phone was ringing. My phone. The one I'd thrown out the car window hours ago. The one with the shattered screen that should be lying on a street somewhere on the other side of town. It was sitting on my coffee table, ringing, the broken screen somehow still glowing with that familiar static. And standing in the corner of my dark living room, barely visible in the shadows, was a tall figure with blurred features and eyes like empty voids. It tilted its head, as if studying me, and then it smiled. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body was locked in place, frozen by pure primal terror. The figure in the corner didn't move either. It just stood there, watching me with those empty black eyes. That impossible smile stretched across its blurred face. The phone on the coffee table kept ringing, the sound echoing through my apartment like a death knell. I don't know how long we stood there. Seconds, maybe minutes. Time felt wrong, stretched out and distorted like the thing's face. Then, slowly, I forced my hand to move toward my gun. My fingers touched the grip and the figure's head snapped toward the movement, fast and jerky like a broken video feed. The phone stopped ringing. The figure flickered, like a TV losing signal, and then it was gone. Just vanished. The darkness in the corner was empty now, just shadows and the outline of my bookshelf. But the phone was still there on the coffee table, still glowing with that static-filled screen. I pulled my gun out with shaking hands and turned on every light in my apartment, checking every room, every closet, even behind the shower curtain. Nothing. I was alone, but the phone remained on the coffee table, impossible and terrifying. I grabbed a dish towel from the kitchen, wrapped it around the phone without touching it directly, and threw the whole thing out my window. I watched it fall 3 stories and shatter on the concrete below. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with my gun in my lap and all the lights on, staring at the door, waiting for something to happen. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked wrong. By the time the sun came up at 6:30 a.m., I felt like I'd aged 10 years. My regular phone, the new one I'd picked up from the station after throwing mine away, buzzed with a call from Morrison. "Foster, get down here now. The detectives in Wilmington found something." I drove to the station running on nothing but adrenaline and fear. When I got there, Morrison had set up a video call in the conference room. On the screen were Detectives Hall and Pierce, standing in what looked like a small, dingy apartment. "Tell him what you found," Morrison said. Detective Hall, a woman in her 50s with gray hair, held up an evidence bag containing a journal. "This belonged to Jessica Mitchell. We found it hidden in a locked drawer in her bedroom. She documented everything." "Everything about what?" I asked. "About how it started." Hall opened the journal and began reading. Jessica was a computer programmer, worked from home mostly. 6 months ago, she started receiving strange messages on her phone. They came at random times, always from blocked numbers, always just static. She thought it was a glitch at first, some bug in her phone's software. But then the messages started changing. Changing how? They started showing images, blurred, distorted images that she couldn't quite make out. She wrote that they made her feel sick to look at, like her brain couldn't process what it was seeing. She took screenshots, but they all came out corrupted. Then one night, exactly 6 months ago, her phone rang at midnight. My heart was pounding now. "What happened?" She answered it. According to her journal, she heard breathing and then a voice. It said, "I've been trying to reach you. Now that you've answered, I can cross over." She hung up immediately, but it was too late. She wrote that she could feel something in her apartment, watching her. She saw it in mirrors, in reflections, always just at the edge of her vision. For 3 days, she documented everything, getting more and more paranoid, more terrified. Then what? Then the entries stop. 3 days after she answered that call, her neighbors found her dead. But here's the thing, Foster. In her final entry, she wrote something important. She said she figured out what it was. "What is it?" I asked, leaning closer to the screen. Hall turned the journal to show me the last page. Jessica's handwriting had degraded into barely legible scrawls, but I could make out the words. "It's not alive. It's not dead. It's something in between. Something that exists in the space between signals. It feeds on fear and connection. Every person who answers gives it more power, more ability to reach further, to touch more people. It's spreading like a virus, but it's not a virus. It's a signal. A corrupted, broken signal that learned how to think, to want, to hunger. And I let it in. I opened the door. God forgive me. I opened the door, and now it won't stop until everyone answers." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Morrison spoke. "So, Jessica Mitchell was patient 0. She answered first, and that gave this thing its entry point into our world. But how do we stop it? I asked. How do we close the door she opened? Detective Pierce spoke up for the first time. He was younger than Hall, maybe 30, and he looked like he hadn't slept either. There's one more thing. We found Jessica's phone. It was in an evidence locker at the Wilmington Police Department. We had the tech guys look at it. And? It's still active, still receiving calls. Even though it's been 6 months since she died, that thing is still trying to call her number, like it's tethered to her somehow. A crazy idea started forming in my mind. What if that's the key? What if her phone is the anchor point, the original connection? Morrison caught on immediately. If we destroy it, maybe we sever the connection. Maybe we stop the whole thing. It's worth a try, Hall said. What have we got to lose? How fast can you get that phone here? Morrison asked. We're already on our way. We'll be in Asheville in 3 hours. Morrison ended the call and turned to me. Foster, I want you to go home. Get some actual rest. When Hall and Pierce arrive, we'll need you sharp for whatever comes next. Captain, I saw it last night in my apartment. It was there. His face went pale. Did you answer your phone? No, but it tried to make me. It was standing in my apartment with my old phone, the one I destroyed hours earlier. It just appeared there. Morrison was quiet for a moment, then said, It's targeting you specifically. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I'm the one investigating. Maybe because I'm getting too close. Or maybe because you're still alive after it tried to call you. Maybe that makes you interesting to it. That thought made my skin crawl. I was marked now, chosen. The thing wanted me specifically, and it wouldn't stop until it got what it wanted. I left the station and drove home, but I didn't go to my apartment. Instead, I went to Rebecca Williams' sister's house. I needed to talk to Rebecca again. Needed to see if there was anything else she remembered. Any detail that might help us. Her sister answered the door looking worried. Detective Foster? Is everything all right? I need to speak with Rebecca. Is she here? She's in the guest room. She hasn't come out all day. I'm worried about her. I followed her inside and knocked on the guest room door. Rebecca, it's Detective Foster. Can I come in? No answer. I knocked again. Rebecca, please. I need to ask you something important. Still nothing. I looked at her sister, who nodded permission, and I opened the door slowly. The room was empty. The window was open, curtains blowing in the breeze. On the bed was Rebecca's phone, screen showing that familiar static, and on the wall, written in what looked like lipstick, was a message. She answered for me. Now she's helping me. Soon everyone will answer. Rebecca's sister screamed behind me. I pulled out my phone and called Morrison immediately. Captain, Rebecca Williams is missing. I think the thing took her. Took her where? I don't know, but I think she's still alive. I think it's keeping her alive for a reason. What reason? I stared at the message on the wall, my mind racing. I think it's using her. Jessica Mitchell opened the door, but she's dead. The thing needed someone else, someone who'd experienced it firsthand, someone who'd heard its voice and survived. It needed Rebecca. Foster, what are you saying? I'm saying that Jessica Mitchell might have been patient zero, but Rebecca Williams is the bridge. She answered that call for Sophia. She made contact, and now it's using her to spread even further. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Hall and Pierce just called. They're an hour away. When they get here, we destroy Jessica's phone and pray that it's enough. And if it's not, then God help us all. I spent the next hour searching for any clue to where Rebecca might have gone, but there was nothing. It was like she'd simply vanished into thin air. Her sister was hysterical, calling Rebecca's friends and family, checking hospitals, doing everything she could think of. But I knew we wouldn't find her, not until this was over, not until we stopped the thing that had taken her. Finally, Hall and Pierce arrived at the station with Jessica Mitchell's phone sealed in an evidence bag. Morrison had called in every available officer, plus the fire department and hazmat teams. We didn't know what would happen when we destroyed the phone, didn't know if it would fight back somehow, so we prepared for everything. We set up in the parking lot behind the station, clearing a wide area. The phone was placed in the center, still glowing with that static-filled screen, still receiving calls from nowhere. I could hear it ringing even through the evidence bag, that distorted, wrong sound that made my teeth hurt. Morrison looked at all of us gathered around. "All right, we're going to destroy this phone completely. Smash it, burn it, whatever it takes to make sure there's nothing left. Everyone ready?" We nodded. Morrison picked up a sledgehammer and approached the phone. He raised it high above his head and brought it down hard. The phone shattered into pieces, plastic and glass and circuits scattering across the concrete. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every phone in Asheville started ringing at once. It was only 2:47 p.m. The sound was deafening. Thousands of phones across the city, all ringing in perfect unison, creating a wave of noise that seemed to shake the ground beneath our feet. Officers around me started pulling out their phones, looking at the screens in horror. Every single one showed the same thing: incoming call, static where the number should be, and the time reading 12 a.m., even though it was the middle of the afternoon. "Don't answer," Morrison shouted. "Nobody answer your phones." But it was too late for some. I watched as 3 officers, seemingly hypnotized by the ringing, brought their phones to their ears. Their expressions went blank, then terrified. Then they started screaming. All 3 collapsed within seconds, their bodies contorting and breaking before any of us could reach them. "Get away from the phones!" I yelled, grabbing the nearest officer and pulling him back. "Throw them away! Everyone throw them away now!" People started hurling their phones across the parking lot, but the ringing didn't stop. It came from everywhere now, from inside buildings, from cars, from houses blocks away. The entire city was screaming with that distorted, wrong sound. Then my new phone started vibrating in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the static-filled screen. But this time, there was something else. Words appearing through the interference, letter by letter. "You broke my anchor. Now I'm free. Thank you, Detective Foster." The phone went dark. The ringing across the city stopped all at once, plunging everything into an eerie silence. Officers looked around at each other, confused, terrified, waiting for something to happen. "What the hell just happened?" Hall asked, her voice shaking. I looked at the shattered remains of Jessica Mitchell's phone scattered across the concrete, and a horrible realization washed over me. We didn't stop it. We freed it. Morrison turned to me, his face pale. "What?" Jessica's phone was the anchor, but it was also the thing keeping it contained, keeping it tied to a specific pattern, specific rules. Midnight calls, one at a time, spreading slowly. But now there's no anchor, no rules. It can call anyone, anytime. As if to confirm my words, the emergency alert system activated again, but this time, the message was different. "Emergency alert. Previous warning no longer sufficient. Do not answer any phone calls from unknown numbers at any time. Avoid all phone use if possible. Seek shelter immediately." "We need to find Rebecca," I said. "She's the bridge now. She's the only connection we have left." Morrison nodded and started barking orders. "I want every available unit searching for Rebecca Williams. Check every location she's ever been, friends, family, her workplace, everything." But I had a different idea. "Captain, I don't think we'll find her by searching. I think she'll find us. Or rather, it will bring her to us." "What are you talking about?" "It wants me specifically. It's been targeting me since the beginning. If Rebecca is the bridge, and it wants to show me something, it'll bring her somewhere I'll look." "Where?" I thought about the message on the wall, about Sophia's death, about where this all started. Maple Ridge Drive, Rebecca's house. That's where it began for her. Morrison, Hall, Pierce, Jenkins, and I took 2 cars and drove across town. The streets were chaos. People were running out of buildings, abandoning their cars, fleeing from the invisible threat that could reach them through any phone at any moment. We passed at least a dozen bodies on the way, people who'd answered calls and paid the price. When we arrived at Rebecca's house, the front door was standing open. I drew my weapon and approached carefully, the other detectives flanking me. Inside, the house was dark and cold, much colder than it should have been for an autumn afternoon. "Rebecca," I called out. "Rebecca, are you here?" A sound came from upstairs, not quite footsteps, but something moving. We made our way up the stairs slowly, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Sophia's bedroom door was open. Inside, I could see a figure standing by the window. It was Rebecca. She turned to face us, and my heart sank. Her eyes were completely black, just like the thing's eyes in the security footage. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was that wrong, stretched smile that didn't belong on a human face.
"Detective Foster,"
she said, but her voice was layered with that distorted quality, like multiple voices speaking at once.
"You came. I knew you would."
"Rebecca, fight it," I said, keeping my gun trained on her. "I know you're still in there. Fight it."
"She can't hear you,"
the thing said through Rebecca's mouth.
"She answered for her daughter. She made contact, and when you destroyed my anchor, she became the new one. She's mine now."
"What do you want?" Morrison demanded.
"Want?"
The thing laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass.
"I don't want anything. I am a signal detective. Signals don't want. They simply transmit. They spread. And now that I'm free from the constraints of that first phone, I can spread everywhere. Every phone, every device, every screen. I'll reach everyone, eventually."
"There has to be a way to stop you," I said.
"There was. Jessica Mitchell knew. She wrote it in her journal, but you didn't read far enough."
Rebecca's hand reached into her pocket and pulled out several folded pages. She dropped them on the floor.
"She figured out how to close the door. But it requires a sacrifice. Someone has to answer. Someone has to make contact and then destroy themselves before the connection completes, before I can fully cross over into them."
I looked at the pages on the floor, then back at Rebecca. "That's why you took her. You needed to tell us, but you couldn't let us succeed."
"I needed someone to understand, someone to know what I am. Jessica was the first. Rebecca is the second. And you, Detective Foster, you're the third, the one who will carry my story forward after tonight."
"I won't let you spread," I said.
"You already have. Every person who died answered their phone. Every death created a new potential bridge. There are hundreds of us now, maybe thousands, all waiting for the right moment to cross over fully. Rebecca is just one. I am everywhere."
Jenkins spoke up behind me. "Then what's the point of telling us? Why show us the solution if you've already won?" Rebecca's smile widened.
"Because Detective Foster hasn't answered yet, and I'm curious to see if he will. If he'll sacrifice himself to save a city, a state, a world, or if he'll let someone else make that choice."
My phone started ringing. Everyone's phones started ringing. The static-filled screens glowed in the darkness of Sophia's bedroom, and I could feel that pull again, that overwhelming urge to answer, to connect, to give in.
"One of you will answer,"
the thing said through Rebecca.
"Eventually everyone answers. It's only a matter of time."
I looked at Morrison, then at the other detectives. I thought about Jessica Mitchell, writing desperately in her journal as she figured out the truth. I thought about Rebecca, losing her daughter and then losing herself. I thought about the hundreds of people who died in the past 2 nights, broken and terrified. And I thought about what would happen if this thing spread beyond Asheville, beyond North Carolina, across the entire world. I made my choice. "I'm sorry," I said to Morrison. Then I answered my phone. The static was overwhelming, flooding through my ears into my brain. I could feel the thing trying to cross over, trying to use me as a bridge. But I'd read Jessica's pages while the thing was monologuing. I knew what I had to do. With my last moment of control, I raised my gun to my head. "No!" Morrison lunged for me, but Jenkins held him back. "This is the only way," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. I could feel the thing inside me now, spreading through my thoughts, trying to take control. But I was faster. I pulled the trigger. The last thing I heard was Rebecca screaming, not with the thing's voice, but with her own. The connection shattered. The signal broke. And everything went dark. I woke up 6 days later in Mission Hospital. Morrison was sitting in a chair beside my bed, and when he saw my eyes open, he actually smiled. "You stubborn son of a bitch," he said. "You missed. Grazed your temple, knocked yourself out cold, but you missed." "The thing?" I managed to croak. "Gone. When you shot yourself, when you broke the connection, it severed every bridge. Rebecca collapsed right after you did. The phone stopped ringing. The death stopped. It's over, Foster. You stopped it." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. But Morrison wasn't finished. "But we don't know if it's really gone. There could be others out there, other signals, other corrupted things waiting in the spaces between technology. And Rebecca, she's not the same. She says she can still feel it sometimes, like an echo in her mind. She has nightmares every night about Sophia." "Where is she now?" I asked. "She left Asheville, said she couldn't stay here with all the memories. Last I heard, she was heading west, trying to find somewhere quiet to start over. She asked me to tell you something if you woke up." "What?" "She said thank you. And she said that if you ever see someone else who looks like they're hearing voices through their phone, someone whose eyes look a little too dark, you should run. Because there might be others, other signals that learn to think, to want, to cross over." I didn't sleep well after that. Even now, months later, I jump every time my phone rings. I screen every call, never answer unknown numbers. Most people in Asheville are the same way. The death toll from those 2 nights was 347 people across North Carolina. The official story was a mass hysteria event, some kind of coordinated attack. But those of us who were there, we know the truth. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Rebecca was right. If there are others out there, waiting in the digital spaces between signals, learning, growing, getting ready to cross over. I wonder if Jessica Mitchell's sacrifice and mine were enough, or if we just delayed the inevitable. I've tried to find Rebecca, to see if she's okay, if she managed to escape the nightmares, but it's like she vanished completely. No trace, no trail, nothing. Just like Sophia, just like the thing that took them both. The only clue I have is a postcard I received last month, postmarked from somewhere in Montana. No message, no signature, just a single sentence written on the back. I can still hear it calling. I keep the postcard in my desk drawer, a reminder that this might not be over. That somewhere out there, Rebecca Williams is still fighting her own battle against the thing that destroyed her life. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever get another mysterious call, if I ever see that static-filled screen again, I won't hesitate. Because some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. We can only hope to keep them from opening any wider.